Thanks for joining us. We're going to wait just another minute to let people continue to sign into the webinar. Today, we're looking at how AI and cultural intelligence are reshaping multicultural health engagement. I'm excited to hand this session over to Republica Havas team. We'll do a Q&A at the end. You can see that icon at the bottom of your screen. Just select the Q&A chat bubbles and you'll be able to submit your questions, and our panelists will answer your questions after they have presented.
You have myself. I'm the EVP of Brand Strategy at Republica Havas Health. And we also have Mark McCush, who is the EVP of Strategy at Havas CX. We have Jane Cran, who is the SVP of Product and Research Operations at M3MI. And Marcella Turner, who is our Director of Strategy at Republica Havas Health. And as I mentioned, all extremely excited to be here. And let's get started with those four key topics that we're going to cover. So the first part is going to be about key trends that are reshaping cross-cultural healthcare engagement. From there, we're going to move on to the multicultural patient journey in an AI-driven era. We are going to connect that with key strategic implications for messaging and customer experience. And then finally, we're going to give you key hypotheses that we think will mark the path forward for cross-cultural healthcare marketers. So let's start with, a key question that it's the foundation for all the research that we did last year. And that is, can AI truly transform healthcare if it doesn't understand the cultures shaping it? So AI is definitely transforming healthcare at an unprecedented speed. However, when you're doing automation without cultural intelligence, you create a space for dangerous irrelevance. And what that can do is that it can deepen health inequities and it can lead to missed business opportunities. So overall, when we connect that with the current multicultural patient shift, where over 40% of Americans are currently identifying as multicultural and are driving the US population growth, and the current ongoing kind of like growth of AI, where we're seeing how it's surfacing patterns at a scale, and also with agentic AI, we're going farther from automating tasks to really developing insights. There is a true opportunity here to really start thinking, how are we going to be weaving in cultural intelligence, particularly at a time where traditional funnels are collapsing, where we're seeing how patients are integrating AI-generated information at a faster speed than what they can actually get and have a conversation with their doctors, which is having an impact, of course, all throughout the journey. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. That comes with its downside, that is the interpretation gap. There is a critical challenge. About 76% of diverse patients currently lack the ability to assess content generated by AI for accuracy. And what this can do is that it can accelerate misinformation. And when you combine this with the other side of the equation, that is 75% of enterprises are deploying AI for efficiency, but they lack the competence to really weave in cultural intelligence to teach algorithms not only why patients are doing what they're doing, but really the why behind it from a cultural standpoint, then that results on efficiency without empathy. So we have what we call the breakthrough formula. And that is, yes, we're using AI to identify pattern as scales, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we weave in cultural intelligence to explain the why behind those patterns. And as a result, we can transform efficiency into relevance, relevance into trust, adoption, and of course, measurable growth. So over the next 25 minutes, we're going to be kind of like putting everything together and seeing how this works. Let's get into the main trends. The first thing that we need to be looking at when we're kind of like assessing for cultural intelligence in our AI ecosystems, particularly again, if you're building agentic AI workflows, is, are we understanding the current cultural context. And right now we have the perfect storm. We have four converging trends. And those trends kind of like they build on each other and they lead to a significant opportunity, but also to significant challenges. The first one, I already briefly touched on that, which is AI generated misinformation. So, yes, health information is moving at a remarkable velocity, but at the same time, it's spreading through all the different channels. It leads to multiple patients, and particularly to diverse patients who have lower health literacy and are eager for information on indications, on treatments, and so on. And it reaches them before they can even have a conversation, of course, with their doctors, or even before they can have a conversation with their families or their community members. What that leads to is, again, to misinformation hitting audiences that need accurate information the most. When you combine that with our second trend, which is the affordability crisis, when you look at the data, 43% of Americans are citing cost as a barrier, and that's even higher among diverse groups. This affordability crisis is really driving patients more and more towards the very same platforms where they're finding misinformation. So that is kind of like, again, trends are building on each other. Then you have the third one that is the political polarization and evolving institutional relationships. So the healthcare landscape, as we know, has become increasingly politicized, and you can see it everywhere. I mean, we can talk about reproductive healthcare access, LGBTQ communities' access to healthcare, immigrant families kind of like waiting in coverage alongside other concerns, right? So, what that leads to is to a lot of uncertainty when it comes to institutional access for healthcare, healthcare coverage, healthcare benefits, and so on. So that kind of like builds on top a historical mistrust that it characterizes these multicultural groups, and it erodes a trust that is already pretty shaky. So the impact, you can see it all throughout, from delayed diagnosis to treatment decisions that are postponed to, again, an over reliance then on networks that, yes, they can help, but at the same time, they might not have all the information that the patient need to make the best choice for their health outcomes. And then finally, you have the regulatory retreat. When you have the FDA intensifying enforcement of advertising regulations, and this hits, both kind of like ends of the spectrum. It hits content and it hits outreach, because from a content standpoint, you have a lot of brands pulling back from nuanced multicultural engagement. From an outreach standpoint, if you have the loss of geofencing and behavioral targeting abilities, that particularly affect the multicultural communities that are needing this healthcare nuance and culturally relevant information the most. So as you can see, as I mentioned, all these trends build on each other. You have multicultural patients navigating AI saturated platforms. And then, they're coming from a position that they're facing economic pressure when it comes to access to healthcare. They're weighing in institutional dynamics and reinforcing the lack of trust. And then they're receiving minimal culturally relevant guidance from the organizations that they're looking up to provide the right type of information to make their healthcare decisions. So at the end of the day, this probes as great challenges, but also as a great opportunity for organizations to design strategies that can address real patient needs, that can build trust and provide culturally relevant guidance with compliance, of course, across frameworks. So I'm going to pass it on to Jane, who will show the data foundation across the patient journey and why it is so important in an AI-driven era to weave in cultural intelligence all across.
Great. Well, thanks, Yasmin. Yes, I'm Jane Cron from M3MI. So over the past 2 years, we've been working with the Republica Havas team to analyze the health behaviors of 23,000 multicultural patients that are drawn from the Mars Consumer Health Study. So if you're not familiar with Mars, it's the gold standard. It's a survey-based data set of 40,000 US adults. It's nationally represented. We've weighted to both the US Census, but as well as the CDC prevalence targets for over 100 different conditions that we measure. Many studies are maybe they're a snapshot, just a single moment in time. But because Mars is updated annually, we can see transformation in motion. This year, we added an important layer to the analysis where we brought in insights from over thousands of physicians. But what we discovered in our analysis validates Yasmin's points that the trends that she described are reshaping the patient journey. So let me show you what that looks like in practice. So in our analysis, we identified the information journey. So from disease awareness and education to making treatment decisions to adherence. So what we see is that in the early stages of the journey, we see a real shift to those non-traditional sources. Compared to the total US adult, multicultural population, they over-index for family and social media influencers as an information source. And while they're highly engaged, as Yasmin mentioned, these diverse populations are less likely to understand how AI can be used for health. Yet we see in our Asian Americans are real power users, they're power researchers. They over-index for doing pre-doctor visit research. So AI may look at this data and then see high digital engagement and then recommend that you spend more with social media. But cultural intelligence tells us that these community networks, social, family, they really expand when institutional trust is low or affordability is an issue. So that pre-visit research isn't a challenge to the doctor. Maybe it's honoring that cultural norm around collective decision making. So if we only look at the click, we miss the cause. We must solve for the trust gap, not just the information gap. So let's look next at the consideration phase. We see a significant rise in the use of alternative medicine. It's 34% at the national level. It jumps up 7 points this year for both Hispanics and our Asian Americans. So AI might flag this as someone avoiding treatment, but cultural intelligence, we see this as integration. These patients aren't rejecting modern medicine. They are blending it with cultural traditions and economic pragmatism. At Converging, one of the areas that we looked at was telehealth adoption. We're seeing that it's up 14 points in African Americans and 9 points in Hispanics. Excuse me, AI might celebrate this as some sort of digital success, but our physician data tells us a different story. So 62% of doctors and 74% of Spanish-speaking doctors say that their patients are struggling with affordability. So for many, telehealth and alternative medicine are economic adaptations, not just preferences. So adherence is also evolving. There are challenges in the multicultural population around insurance coverage and medical costs. But we also see that there's a 17-point growth in health device adoption and a 10-point growth in online community reliance in the Asian American community. Adherence is becoming community sustained. It's happening in online groups that are sharing strategies and information, not just at the doctor's office. So as we can see, data is a critical foundation. But data alone is an incomplete picture. AI sees patterns, cultural intelligence sees people. So when Hispanic patients use WhatsApp, AI might see a channel, but we see community adaptation. When African Americans show hesitation, AI may see that there's some low intent, but we see rational skepticism. So what do we do with this? The question is, are we building systems that just collect data or systems that can interpret it? So next, I'm going to hand it off to Mark, who will show you the 4 critical layers to embedding the intelligence into your operations.
Thanks, Jane. When we look at our CX strategic imperatives, this is where CX can really play a core role in terms of driving trust and engagement and really getting past just driving engagement on that surface level, but really driving towards outcomes. The first piece is around looking at CX beyond just channel preferences. We need to dive deeply into personalization, really making sure that it's culturally attuned, that the experiences we generate and create are compelling to our audience, that they're full of empathy and they're informed by empathy. And we show that this outperforms just broad targeting and channel targeting. Personalization at this level can become a real differentiator, really getting into kind of intracultural nuance, looking at subsegments. This is where CX can really shine and deliver those personalized experiences and really go beyond that, what we would call monolithic style messaging. What can really drive this is first-party data. That is foundational. And I see a question around CX. CX stands for customer experience. So this is all around how we apply customer experience to cultural intelligence and how the two can work together to really make sure that, again, we're building trust, we're building engagement, and driving the right outcomes. And at the heart of it is first-party data. So making sure that we're able to collect that data by providing a value exchange that's relevant and meaningful to our audiences. This fuels rich profiles where we can really start to understand our audiences and engage them on that one-to-one level. And once we do that, we can start to really elevate our CX or our customer experience approach. That data really elevates what we can do. We're more accurate with our audience. We can drive more trust, and we can tailor how we deliver our experiences for more of our audience. So if we look at the different layers that we use from an approach perspective, the first one is going to be the strategy layer. So this is the framework that we create when we really combine cultural intelligence through AI into our CX approach. Using that strategy layer, this is what really informs our AI engine about the context, the cultural context that we need to apply. Are there historical grievances? Or are there social determinants of health? How do we make sure that we're looking even within communities for the diversity that's rich and meaningful within communities? And what kind of decision logic do we need to create there? The next level is that interpretation level. So this is, again, getting at that key component of why patterns exist. It's not just what's appearing, but really applying that context to the data that we're seeing and really, training the AI to understand that and to interpret it in the right way. The next piece is on execution. So how do we review our content that we generate and make sure that we're checking for bias, that we're guiding towards culturally native strategies? And this is a really important component that we can, again, leverage AI to make sure that we're working towards delivering trustworthy, engaging, and meaningful experiences. And then finally, optimization, that optimization layer of making sure that we're driving efficiency, but driving efficiency with an eye towards outcomes and impact, not just sheer engagement. And so that's where we can make sure that our AI is really driving the right holistic approach. When we look at the data in terms of organizations that are using culturally informed strategies, we can see that the success is clear. Just going to wait for a second till the next slide goes. When we look at just from a revenue perspective, 2.9 times more revenue and 1.5 greater cost savings are leveraged by companies that are leveraging cultural intelligence as part of their ecosystem, as part of their strategy. 95% accuracy in connected data systems compared to 70% with traditional methods. This is all about better decision making. 2.6 times higher engagement when deploying in-language AI conversational agents, again, driving relevance and trust at scale. And 25 to actually 40% reduction in treatment abandonment when through predictive AI informed by cultural context. So some really great indicators that this is the right path to follow. I'm going to pass it on now to Marcella, who's going to talk a little bit about what we can expect in the future.
Thank you, Mark, and hello, everyone. So now that we've seen the shifts happening in the past few years, I think it's time to look a little more into the future. So from our research, we identified 6 hypotheses on how AI and culture can shape the future of healthcare. So let me just walk you through what we think is coming next. So first, we have the data ecosystem advantage. And yes, we all know data ecosystems are getting smarter. There's nothing new there. But the key here is that we believe tomorrow's data will need to capture cultural context. That means values and language preferences and family dynamics and all those nuances that truly drive health decisions. So when organizations do this, they can understand how patients really decide, how language is building trust, how affordability really will shape their choices. And as Mark just shared, accuracy is highest when cultural intelligence is truly embedded throughout the learning process. Second one, we have the in-language imperative. Yes, we see AI getting trained in language, but we think that winning AI will also be guided by cultural resonance because we do see higher engagement with in-language that doesn't just translate, but communicates in a way that is authentic. And with 1 in 5 people speaking a language other than English at home, in-language AI with cultural context has the potential to drive equity and even unlock growth for organizations. The third one is what we call the co-design requirement. So what we're seeing is comfort with medical information is growing through the right partnerships. So this is what will move more communities to help design AI systems in the future. And for brands, we think that path is pretty clear. We need to involve communities early on, test prototypes, validate outputs, identify any bias before ever scaling. So this means we need to build with people and not just for them. The fourth one is that transparency need, very straightforward. So to build trust, organizations will need to clarify how are they using AI, what data are they using for it, how are they reviewing outputs, how are addressing potential bias, because for example, we know bias in AI can lead to less accurate diagnosis for minority patients, but when organizations openly address and improve this kind of issues, they can earn these patients' trust. Fifth is a predictive intervention. We know AI will be able to predict problems before they happen, but how we see this is by integrating cultural intelligence on social determinants of health data like housing and food access and transportation and social influence and more. AI can be able to identify populations at risk early. So imagine putting in place a targeted financial support system before cost even becomes a barrier, or even facilitating in-language telehealth options before appointments are missed by patients. The potential is all about reducing treatment abandonment in underserved communities. And sixth and last one is the emotional resonance shift. So we know AI will develop emotional intelligence, but we think it has to be grounded in cultural understanding, because we see the most effective AI is when it combines intelligence with emotional, but also cultural fluency. And what this can look like is cultural intelligence guiding tone, framing messaging around cultural values, adapting how empathy resonates across different populations, and many things more. So essentially, it's about micro-personalization that can honor cultural differences at scale. So as AI moves forward, we see something really interesting happen. We see human cultural expertise becoming even more valuable, and the brands that leverage this can define what comes next in health equity and also engagement. And with that, I'll pass it back to Ada Smith to wrap us up and show you how to access the white paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcela. So let's bring it all together. So far, you have seen the urgency. You saw the 4 converging trends that are creating the perfect storm, reshaping how multicultural patients are navigating healthcare. You have also seen the evidence, the rigorous research across 23,000 patients, revealing the transformation at every journey phase and why cultural intelligence is important in every single one of them. You have also seen with Mark the implementation, what are practical frameworks that are built on transparency and that can embed cultural intelligence from strategy to optimization. And then finally, you have seen a little bit of the future with Marcella sharing the 6 clear pathways showing where this market is heading and how to position yourself for leadership. So here's at the end of the day, what truly matters. When you pair AI with cultural intelligence, you're unlocking remarkable potential. You can surface patterns at a scale while at the same time preserving authentic human connection. You can achieve personalization that truly respects cultural context, and you can build systems that understand people, not just process data. So the organizations that are mastering these integrations are the ones that are going to define the next era of cross-cultural healthcare marketing. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the research, because of course this is only 30 minutes, we invite you to download our white paper at republicahavashealth.com, and you can have immediate access to everything that was covered today and way more. And you can also reach out to either Republica Havas Health, Havas CX, or M3MI if you want to explore how these strategies can specifically be targeted to your processes or your own brand. And at the end of the day, we just want to leave you with, the future of healthcare engagement really rewards those who lead with cultural intelligence, precision data, and thoughtful AI. Thank you, and let's open it up for Q&A.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was such a wonderful presentation, really great information. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for any questions that we may have. If you have a question, please use the bottom of your screen to navigate to either the chat tab or the Q&A tab, and our panelists will be more than happy to answer your questions. We have one question. It is, can you address any limitations you are finding for implementing some of these solutions in line with state privacy laws?
Yeah, what I would say on my end is that a lot of what we're doing from A to C is to ensure that the systems that we are using for agentic AI workflow building ensure compliance when it comes to privacy data. So it is an ongoing topic, and it's one that particularly when it comes to healthcare information and primary data from patients is extremely relevant. But in our case, is ensuring that we have the right partners when it comes to the tools that we're using. Any other questions?
Well, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to our panelists. You'll be able to review their white paper that we posted in the chat. It's the first message, and also on that website has the contact information for Republica Havas, and you can reach out to our team that way. I just wanted to thank our panelists again for bringing us this wonderful study and such a great conversation today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.